Welcome to the 5th event in this year's Seavey reading series. I'm Catherine Zobel-Dent. I'm the director of Susquehanna University's Writers Institute, and tonight I'd like to set the mood with a few lines from Louise Gluck's essay, Disruption, Hesitation, Silence. All earthly experience is partial, not simply because it is subjective, but because that which we do not know of the universe, of mortality, is so much more vast than that which we do know. What is unfinished or has been destroyed participates in these mysteries. The problem is to make a whole that does not forfeit this power. All right, a little light reading. Before I introduce the student who will introduce tonight's featured guest, I'd like to thank each of you for the role you play in fostering the Writers Institute community. Whether you're a writer, a reader, a fellow educator, a lover of the arts, or just a curious visitor, thank you for being here tonight. My gratitude extends to the generations of people who inhabited this land long before it became a university, and to our university ancestors, the scholars and the academics who dedicated their academic leaders who dedicated their lives to making this place hospitable and accessible. Thank you to our administrators. Thank you to Dean Pat Long for being here to support us tonight. Thank you for your ongoing support, Professor Matt Knoll for organizing the Seavey reading series, and Ellie Taliani, our series assistant, and our literary arts interns, Brooke, Jen, Arabella, and Ayla, who are here to support the event tonight. And I'm grateful also to the bookstore, IT, and events management for all of their help. Finally, thank you to Carla, Monica, Hasantika, Glenn, Silas, Matt, and Tony for being writers and colleagues who inspire students and me every day. Okay, I have a few practical matters. Please remember to silence your cell phone. Know that at the end of the evening, our author will be happy to sign copies of his books at the box office, and I believe also we'll be open to having a few questions at the end of the reading. So after the reading, you'll get a chance to ask a few questions. And now, what I'm really privileged and here to do, I'm honored to introduce you to Gray Weatherford Brown. Gray is a senior creative writing and publishing and editing double major from Pittsburgh. A former voter engagement intern for the Johnson Center for Civic Engagement, a current literary arts intern for the Writers Institute, a co-head editor of Apprentice Writer, and our department's alumni newsletter intern, Gray is a talented creative nonfiction writer and poet, praised and admired by faculty and peers. Gray's poetry chapbook, I Already Know the Cat Died, was selected for publication by Sucker Punch Press in the 2023 small press class. That spring, Gray also won Essay Magazine's Eric Kirkland Memorial Prize for their essay Beautiful Children. Gray's work has been published off campus in journals including Literary Bohemian, Ghost City Review, Rising Phoenix Press, and twice in Eunoria Review's Poem a Day series. Their collection, Ginger Queer Anamorph, just won the 2025 Fink Senior Portfolio Prize and will be published this spring by the Writers Institute as a gift for friends and donors. I am so happy to turn this evening over to Gray.
Sorry, you're gonna have to move that back up later. I'm Gray Weatherford Brown, and tonight I have the honor to be introducing poet, visual artist, and educator Terrance Hayes. Hayes has taught in Japan, Columbus, Ohio, New Orleans, Louisiana, Carnegie Mellon University, and the University of Pittsburgh. He is currently a distinguished professor of English at New York University. In 1999, Hayes' very first book, Muscular Music, won a Whiting Writers Award and the Kate Tufts Discovery Award. From there, his collection, Hip Logic, won the National Poetry Series. His book, Lighthead, won the highly esteemed National Book Award in 2010. One poem in Lighthead, entitled The Golden Shovel, platformed and quoted the great Gwendolyn Brooks poem, We Real Cool. The Golden Shovel is featured heavily in all circles of literary discourse and has become its own poetic form, emulated even here in our classrooms at Susquehanna. His book, How to Be Drawn, received the 2016 NAACP Image Award for Poetry, and in 2018, American Sonnets for My Past and Future Assassin received widespread critical acclaim for Hayes' mastery over wordplay and lyricism, his apt and timely political commentary, and the way he pushed the sonnet form to encapsulate the experience of being truly American. He is a National Endowment for the Arts Fellow, a 2009 Guggenheim Fellow, and a 2014 MacArthur Foundation Fellow, and at this point, you have probably noticed it'd be quicker for me to list the awards Terrance Hayes has not earned. Hayes' work has reached so many people because his poetry uses its form and content to push us to new understandings of the world, particularly of America. His work asks us, demands us, to think critically and to build our own well-informed version of truth. My entry to Hayes' work opened in 2018, when I was in high school making inconsistent handmade zines, and Hayes was serving as a chancellor for the Academy of American Poets. I was privileged to be attending an arts magnet in Pittsburgh Kappa, where American Sonnets for My Past and Future Assassin was assigned to me in my poetry class. My teacher touted the book as an example of how to bend the form of a poem to take the shape of its meaning, an exercise in reclamation. If you haven't read it, every sonnet in the book holds the same title as the book itself, as if each poem is a refraction spiraling out kaleidoscopically to tell one long, continuous story of Black American identity. At the risk of stealing a bit of Hayes' thunder tonight, I'd like to share just a bit of my favorite poem from high school, one I've held in my heart all these years. It began like this. I lock you in an American sonnet that is part prison, part panic closet, a little room in a house set aflame. In 2018, I was just coming into myself, discovering my queerness, discovering the impossibility of labels, discovering the rage. In 2018, just 2 years into the first round of the Trump administration, these lines of verse touched the deep well of hurt my community was feeling at the time. In 2025, it still resonates, perhaps even deeper than before. The house is on fire. Our personal panic room may be locked, but we are locked in from the outside. And we're all feeling that heat rising. The sonnet ends with its finger on the pulse of the nation. The last two lines are, voltas of acoustics, instinct, and metaphor. It is not enough to love you. It is not enough to want you destroyed. Hayes never shies from holding his reader accountable, calling us to look at our action or pointing out our inaction, generating more questions than answers. The shape his poems take are as diverse as America itself, asking us to look beyond any one viewpoint and instead read his words with two eyes. In another of Hayes' poems, From My Past and Future Assassin, he retells the story of Orpheus writing to Eurydice, of a drawing he sends to her, a human eye with an X through it. He meant, I am blind without you. She thought he meant, I never want to see you again. It is possible he meant that too. Hayes draws us that same eye in each of his poems, an image or a moment braided into verse and left for us to love hopelessly or cast away. Tonight, while we listen to his words, I'll hold the meanings on the tip of my tongue and let them rest there. All of you will too. Think and wonder and listen, but just remember, it is possible he is telling your story. It is possible he meant that too. Thank you, and without further ado, here's Terrance Hayes.
Hey everybody. Thanks, great, that was great. Is that assonance? Great, that was great. So look, let me just read y'all some poems and then we're gonna get to this Q&A. And I will say if you have questions at the end, it means that you weren't listening. But I'll try to get us to the point where we can do some questions. I also say sometimes to people, if you have a question in the middle of something or between something, raise your hand. I'll answer it. That's what I hated about church. You couldn't, they could just say anything. And you'd be like, so I just want to know about the dinosaurs. And never, you never had a chance to ask. So I'm going to read. I had sort of said earlier, my primary concern is always like the last thing and the next thing. So I do have something here, and that's usually what keeps me uneven. Like, it could be terrible. How much of it should I try? So I think I don't want it to be the last. I also don't want it to be the first. So I'll go through some of these poems in American Sonnets. It's true. I wrote them. I started writing them in 2016. I published the book in 2018. And you know what I'm going to do for you, because this is a similar situation. And yes, they had the same title, so they could kind of be whatever they wanted to be. And I'll read you a couple of definitions. In fact, those two pieces that you heard were sort of days where I was trying to define what the form was. I was just trying to write one every day. Sometimes I would write two, to be not distracted from the news. So I'm not going to read the ones that you just heard, but I'm going to say something about those endings. It is not enough to love you. It is not enough to want you destroyed, ambivalence. And in the other one about it's possible that I meant that too. This question of sort of ambivalence is running through what one would feel. But here's another one that I wrote sort of, should I start out with this one? This is like so intense, because I usually try to read it like a preacher. Here, I'll do another one first. I mean, now it's going to be a big buildup. So some days as I was writing it, I would just be looking for definitions for what I was doing here. Let's start my timer here. So this is, to me, a definition of the American sonnet. The song must be cultural, confessional, clear, but not obvious. It must be full of compassion and crows bowing in a vulture's shadow. The song must have 6 sides to it and a clamor of voltas. The song must turn on the compass of language like a tangle of wire endowed with feeling. The notes must tear and tear. There must be a love for the minute and the minute. There must be a record of witness and daydream, where the heart is torn or feathered and tarred, where death is undone, time diminished. The song must hold its own storm and drum and shed a noise so lovely it is sung at sunset weddings, baptisms, and beheadings henceforth. So again, like between the baptisms and beheadings. But this one here, if I start telling y'all stories, we're not going to have time for the poems. I was like reading in a church with Jane Hirschfield, who's like a kind of Buddhist, very spiritual, cool, like important. But I was like, I think I should read this like a sermon, since she's going to probably doing something religious or something. And so then I was like, okay, I think I'll read it like that from now on. And again, it's just one of the poems. I read a few others where it's essentially just trying to tell you what I think an American sonnet is. And I already said this thing about like kind of ambivalence, like love poems for somebody trying to kill you. Does that make sense? That's politics. I'm trying to say to you, it ain't black and white. Like if we're just going to ask what I'm writing into, that's why I'm setting you up this way. To say that it is like, one day I want to knock you out, another day I'm like, I want to pet you on the head, make sure you're okay. Okay. Our sermon today concerns the dialectic blessings in transgression and transcendence. We're on the middle floor, where the darkness we bury is equal to the lightness we intend. We stand in the valley and go to our knees on the mountain. One rope pulls a body down and into earth, and the other pulls up and after stars. To be divided is to be multiplied. Let us ponder how it is that you and I have remained alive. Mississippi and all the seas bound to sky by rain, the root and reach of all the trees. When the wound is deep, the healing is heroic. Y'all don't hear me now? You don't hear me, church. I said, when the wound is weak, when the wound is deep, the healing is heroic. Suffering and ascendance require the same work. Our sermon today sets the beauty of sin against the purity of dirt. So that's just the definition, too, of trying to figure out like what this thing is here. And then, again, I was writing them every day. Sometimes they would be other things. Like this would be one where I'm always sort of torn about when I'm playing on the idea of woe and woe, of like, whoa. I think I want to say it up front because I never get it right when I do the poem, even though, I've been reading these since 2018. But at the end, it's like woes, and then W-O-E. That's all I'm going to say to you. American Sonnet for my past and future assassin. The umpteenth thump on the rump of a badunkadunk stumps us. The lump, the chump, the hunk of plunder, the umpteenth horny, honky stump speech punts a funky rumble over air. The umpteenth slump in our humming democracy, a bumble bureaucracy with teeny tiny wings too small for its rumpled dumpling of a body. Humpty Dumpty, frumpy suit. The umpteenth honk of hollow thunder, the umpteenth believe me, the umpteenth grumpy, jumpy retort. Chump change, casino game, tuxedo, teeth bleach, stomp speech. Junk science, junk bond, junk country, stomp speech. The umpteenth boast stumps our toe. The umpteenth falsehood stumps our elbows, our eyeballs, our nose, our woes, wows, and woes. Or our woes, wows, and woes. I never can decide. There's that one. And then, they do show up, because I got to get to the other stuff, so we can talk about the sonnets later if you want to. They do show up because, again, at about midway through, my editor was like, I think we got enough to do a book. So this book came out in 2018, the American Sonnets, and this book, which came out in 2023, still has a few of them in it. And really, as I said, I kind of about like whether I would go back to them. I'm trying to write, back to the stuff that I want to write. And this poem that I wrote, actually in 2018, was a time very much like right now, where something had happened, and I was convinced it was the end for him. So I was like, okay, we're going to get back to normal. And so this is a poem that I still feel American Sonnet for the New Year is always just sort of where we perpetually feel we are. And also adverbs. So I think I'm thinking, I said earlier about practice, like if my practice is always like, even in this instance, my practice is to get up and write a sonnet and put whatever's going on in the news or in my head or in the day into that sonnet. But my exercise would be like, could I also do adverbs? People say don't put adverbs in poems. Things got terribly ugly incredibly quickly. Things got ugly embarrassingly quickly, actually. Things got ugly unbelievably quickly, honestly. Things got ugly seemingly infrequently initially. Things got ugly ironically, usually awfully carefully. Things got ugly unsuccessfully, occasionally. Things got ugly mostly painstakingly, quietly, seemingly. Things got ugly beautifully, infrequently. Things got ugly sadly, especially frequently, unfortunately. Things got ugly increasingly, obviously. Things got ugly suddenly, embarrassingly, forcefully. Things got ugly really, regularly, truly, quickly. Things got really incredibly ugly. Things will get less ugly, inevitably, hopefully. So there's your Volta exercise. The last word. The last word is the Volta, hopefully. And then I'll say this too, over the course of trying to write them, all kinds of things show up. Like here's American Sonnets for Inner Vision. So as I said, the last book of sonnet, American Sonnets for My Past and Future Assassin. I still hold on to this idea of like what an American sonnet would be, which is, I was in Germany in July and they wanted to argue with me about whether I was writing sonnets or not. And I was like, American, modifier. American sonnet. So let me do a quick lesson for you. Like Italian sonnet, that's like, they're all 14 lines, so it's 2 quatrains, 4, 4, and then you change your mind, and then you got 3, 3 to get out. You follow me? And that makes sense. That's like Enlightenment. No, you won't find no sonnets that are 7/7. I tried one, but 7/7 is just like, that's not even making a statement. English sonnet, 12 lines, and then the last two you change your mind. Which I say, like, that's why they were colonizers. Like, that makes sense. Because look, you'll be like, I'm right for 14, out of the 12 lines, of the 14 lines, I'm right for 12 of them. But Enlightenment would be like, it can't be 50-50. So what would an American sonnet be? The Italian sonnet is Enlightenment. The British sonnet is like, we write all the time. And an American sonnet to me is like changing your mind. It's once up, then it's down. You got a black president, and you got the opposite of a black president. So it's just like going back and forth all the time. That's the only tissue. So that was my argument in Germany. I think they're American sonnets. So even here, American sonnet for the new year, I still do just think, even if it's not explicitly about somebody trying to kill you, it's still about this idea of just turning and like things shifting all the time. But I say that to say, I'm really trying to get away from it. Even I have a new one to read you, but here you can see like if I'm relaxing and still doing the American sonnet, but not thinking about, the administration, this maybe the shadow in it. So this is American Sonnet for Inner Visions, which is, again, for people who don't know music, that's like one of Stevie Wonder's greatest records. If you don't know this, Inner Visions, go look it up on Spotify. Okay. When James Baldwin and Audre Lorde each lend Stevie Wonder an eyeball, he immediately contends with gravity, falling either to his knees or flat on his luminous face. I've heard various versions of the story. In this one, Audre Lorde dons immaculate French loafers, turtleneck ball gown, and afro halo. An eye-sized ruby glimmers on a pinky ring that's a hair too big for Jimmy Baldwin's pinky. He's blue with beauty. They're accustomed to being followed, but now the eye patch twins will be especially scary to white people. Looking upon them, Stevie Wonder's head purples with plural visions of blackness, gavels, grapples, purrs, pins. Odds are 10 to 1, God also prefers to be referred to as they and them. And here's one, I maybe do just a few more from this. There's some other stuff to get to. That's or recent other than these sonnets, which would have the title, which, as I said, things would still show up, or instances would still come, and I would feel kind of compelled to try one. So this one, I'm trying to look for it while I come up with this story for it. I had gone to see, I think it was in 2020, this documentary that was on Aretha Franklin, since she's, and this thing about them having the same title, this is a different book. So in this documentary, it was called like Amazing Grace or something. There's a moment in this documentary where she's singing this song, which I had heard, I'd never seen, Precious Lord. And she's doing some kind of mix of it with like Donny Hathaway. And like I said, I had heard the version of it even in high school. It was filmed like in the 70s. But this is my first time seeing this video that's now on Amazon or something, where I'm seeing the actual scene where she made the song. And it's so immense that like people are falling out. The people in the choir can't even keep up. They're like all getting the Holy Ghost. And at one point, the cameraman swings to y'all. He just looks at the audience, and it's like, they throw it out. But right in the middle, is this little black person. Sleeping through the whole thing. So then I was like, well, what would that mean though? Like if you were a kid who missed all the magical moments, or that's what the magic exists. But what if all the God moments, all the magic moments, you just slept on? What kind of person would you be? So again, sometimes they would show up in the book, and so this one was called American Sonnet for My Past and Future Assassin. And it's made up, right? I saw that, I went home, I wrote this thing, so I wanted to put Nina Simone. How many people know? Y'all gotta know now. If you write down these names, you don't know about Nina Simone. So amazing, Nina Simone, Aretha Franklin never did like a duet together. So in my mind, as a poet, I can make that happen. Because if it had happened, the world would have ended. If they had like gotten together and sang. So I'm gonna put it in the poem. Okay. When Aretha and Nina sang Mary Don't You Weep into the same mic, levitating on stage, the future dictator, age 6 or 8, ward of a black maid for a Sunday, was asleep. We pined for a timeline wherein he remained awake. The big yellow flowers, yellow sparks, and yellow jackets swarming out of the mouths of the divas in this dazzling, undocumented happening distracted no one attached to their singing. No one saw when one woman took the other by the hand or what appeared between them when they let go. Some guess a celestial rope or a roadway or the disembodied robe of Lazarus, or one of them held the head and the other the tail of the snake being returned to the garden, as if nothing could be holier than forgiving him. In any case, the future dictator was not awake. And moving into stories, y'all, if you're gonna be missing stuff, if you're clapping through everything, because I'm not gonna stop, I'm just gonna read it. So I'd be like, don't clap, because you're gonna hear it. So this is, again, like what I would think of as like a kind of a hinge moment, American Sonnet for my grandfather's love child. And I guess I'll just say that, like, this is getting back to like when I'm waking up in the morning and don't know what's gonna happen, what kind of poem will show up for me. You take a tree where all the blackbirds are sleeping except for the one clapping its wings. That's the kind of woman who raised me. My mother changed her name to daughter, then to sister, then back to mother again. 3 times she parked outside her wretched father's house, undertaking a melancholy kind of karaoke. She can't sing really, she's ashamed of her teeth. But she pretended an MC was saying, give her a hand when she finished. I wasn't there, but I bet she jangled her car keys as if she was offering a girl a ride to the beach, to the ocean side, to the water a girl becomes to survive, and the soft applause washing ashore when she retreats. To love her, I had to love the night curling up around me. I woke up surprised whether she was coming or going. I never read these 2 poems back to back because, again, like there's some poems, well, you know, I'll say earlier, I just sort of said my mother, when people ask her about me, even now, into the books and everything else, she says, you know, he's a professor. And I said earlier, I prefer that because if she really took me seriously as a poet, she would be reading these poems. I don't want her to do that. So here's another poem where she kind of shows up, and this is the one where she would kill me if she saw it. So Ars Poetica with Bacon. So it's supposed to be, you know, should I tell y'all the lines up front so you can kind of hear the things that I'm asking? Like, you know, there's a line about walking a path in the dark is about something the way a family is about something. Like, what really is a family about, you know? And so I'm saying to you in advance, that's kind of how I think about poetry. You know, it's about something, but it's like so many different kinds of things connected to it. Here's another line. I'm going to save the big one in here, but this other line too, starting out, we have no wounds to speak of beyond the ways our parents expressed their love. So I'm just giving you up front to see if you can make this connection that I'm saying. It's not going to sound like it's a poem about what I think about poetry, but it is about like even the gesture to kind of sometimes do the right thing can still be damaging. Even the gesture to like put it in a poem or be a good parent, you know, even that effort for love. Okay, but it's Ars Poetica with Bacon, and I'm saying to you really, when I'm not in that kind of sonnet mode, which I really did for that book, there's another mode, which is just like a dude from South Carolina, making poems up, wanting to tell weird stories. Okay. Fortunately, the family, anxious about its diminishing food supply, encountered a small, possibly hostile pig along the way. The daughter happened upon it first, pushing its scuffed snout against something hidden at the base of a thorn bush, a blood-covered egg maybe, or a small rubber ball exactly like the sort that snapped from the paddle my mother used to beat me with when I let her down. At the time, the father and mother were tangled in some immemorial dispute about cause and effect. Who'd harmed whom first? How jealousy did not, in fact, begin as jealousy, but as desperation. When the daughter called out to them, they turned to see her lift the pig, it was no heavier than an orphan, from the bushes and then set it down in their path. They waited to see whether the pig might idle forward with them until they made camp or wander back toward the home they'd abandoned to war. Night, enclosed in small drops of rain, began to fall upon them. Consequence is the word that splintered my mind. Walking a path in the dark is about something the way a family is about something. Like the pig, I too wanted to reach through the thorns for the egg or ball, believing it was a symbol of things to come. I wanted to roll it in my palm like the head of a small red bird until it sang to me. I wanted to know how my mother passed her days having never touched her husband's asshole, for example. Which parts of your body have never been touched? I wanted to ask. I've been hired to lead the family from danger to a territory full of more seeds than bullets. But truth was, in the darkness, there was no telling what was rooting in the soil. Plots of complete silence, romantics posing in a field bludgeoned by shame. The heart, biologically speaking, is ugly as it pumps its passion and fear down the veins. Which is to say, starting out, we have no wounds to speak of beyond the ways our parents expressed their love. We were never sure what the pig was after, or whether, in fact, it was not a pig, but some single-minded soul hunger had turned into a pig, some devil worthy of mercy. Without giving away the enigmatic ending, I will say, when we swallowed the flesh, our eyes were closed. So here's the thing about writing a bunch of poems over a period of time, because this new poem that I was going to read you is about bacon. So I feel like I'm going to just jump to that now and read it to you. I believe you're going to. I mean, I sent a whole bunch of poems to the New Yorker, and of course they want to put these sonnets in there. I'm like, this wasn't the only thing I sent you, but I mean, since they took it, I'm going to read it to you. I don't know if we're close enough for y'all to know about this thing. I mean, the poem is what it's about, which is like, last summer, Independence Day, and people just giving me something that was just like, what is this? Hash? I mean, I don't know if y'all, anyway, I'll just read it. We can talk about it in Q&A. Okay. South Carolina American Sonnet for Independence Day. The comfort in the smell of bacon in the morning is mostly burning fat and salt, but the taste is sweet as the part of the pig that stores the soul. That's what I think. I don't like nothing else on a pig, but that bacon. If there's a soul in the body, it's where the bacon is. If you don't bless it, it might choke you, my mother likes to say over the plates. My definition of family includes the sense kinfolk know and think they know things about you, but only share these things with family members when you ain't in the room. Last time I was home, my cousin offered me hash, a ground up, boiled, antebellum mash of leftover hog, liver and lung, brain to snout and skull, covered in hot sauce and served on a bed of instant rice. I said, hell no, but I let a bit touch my tongue to be polite before saying hell no twice. Ooh, I didn't know what it was. My dad told me not to eat it. And I was like, whew. Anyway, we can talk about it. It's some kind of slave food. Here's my dad showed up here. So even though he's not in the poem, this will be a kind of conversation too, if I can give y'all some Q&A stuff. We got about 10 minutes. We was watching this movie, and a thing happened in the movie. It's like a continuity thing. So the poem is called Continuity. I don't know how to explain it. This is what happened. This just sort of launched the poem. The woman gave the dude like a soda, and then they did something else, and they turned back, and it was the same clip. So I was like watching it with my dad. I'm not going to tell you what the movie was until you ask later. And I was like, did you see that? And he was like, yeah, that's weird that you see these things in movies in this day and time. And I was like, I'll be right back. And so I went upstairs and worked on this. And then it came out mostly in one sitting, which has probably happened maybe 5 times in a million poems and 30 years of writing. But this time, for some reason, I was like, okay. So anyway, so it's continuity. Before getting into the cab, she hands him a cup. Then, after they kiss, she hands him the cup again. As they walk, she hands him a man-made substance. Then, after they kiss, she hands him the cup again. She hands him a chalice of lightning, and he hands her a chalice of fire. Then, in the next shot, after they kiss, they exchange chalices again. When she goes through the metal detector, she carefully places a pair of hoop earrings in a plastic tray. When she retrieves them, there are 2 silver bangles she fits to her wrist. When they climb from the cab in the rain, her hair is wet. But when they kiss on the sidewalk, her hair is dry again. After she takes off her helmet and breastplate and enters the water wearing nothing but courage, she says to him, "You are nude, but you must be naked to win." But the subtitles read, "To survive, you must bear the heart." When they climb from the river, her hair is a river where night has fallen, tangled with twigs and stars, parting like a path of escape. But in the very next shot, as they climb from the river, her hair is braided with wire and string. When he bangs on the rain-streaked window of the cab, yelling her name in a pivotal scene, briefly reflected in the window, in the rain, tangled with wires and stars, above a river is the hand of a fan or a stagehand, bodyguard, body double, bystander, interloper, beloved ghost, and the 2 of us watching from a bridge on the far side. Which is what I think must happen in New York. You know, I'm like, sometime I'm gonna show up in somebody's movie, because I'll be walking around, I'll be looking in the New York set movies to see what's gonna happen. Okay, let me try this March thing on you, and then I'll figure out one more thing to get out of here so we don't end on it, unless it works out, I guess. Let me make sure I got a backup, a short backup poem, depending on how I feel after this next one. Okay, there we go, I got a little Lil Wayne for you, I can do that. Okay, so, you know, writing every day, it is what I try to do. And so I had this little assignment, and I was doing this writing, trying to actually capture my unofficial writing for March. But one of the days, I was just like, holidays in March. And so I just did a thing I like called marching orders. So it's just totally a thing connected to another thing, but I gotta try it on you. So just bear with me for a minute, and then I'll read something else and we'll be done. Marching orders. On the first Saturday, so these are all, like on the first Saturday is like wedding day or something like that. You don't need to know that for the poem. It was just like how I was getting stuff going, but it's irrelevant, I think. Okay, marching orders. On the first Saturday, you march for wedding plans and piglets with candles lit for longing, dressed in hooves and jazz for broken sleep. The book you once thought written by a lady named Merriam-Webster says factoid is the first word of the day. You march on the second day with teenaged engineering in your heart, with books cracked open or burning from coast to coast. On the third day, you march dressed in birth defects and defective anthems, with talking cats and dogs with thumbs. You march on the fourth with pop and Mardi Gras beads. Miss Merriam-Webster declares the word of the fourth day, schadenfreude, akin to the laughter that leaks from a trumpet when a soldier stumbles in a march. How subtle can I be? The laughter that leaks from a trumpet when a soldier stumbles in a march. You know that motherfucker would laugh. You march on Wednesday, the 5th, dressed in ashes. You march on the 6th, suited in popular music and post of paradox and parody. This is the day Dred Scott's memory opens like a scar returning to a wound. You march on the 7th day like denim, blue or faded to one of the colors of the sky. On the 8th, you march with clusters of peanuts in your hands. On the 9th, the hour marches over griefs like a robot parade. The 10th marches like Harriet Tubman walking north. The 11th, the hour marches over griefs like a parade of news vans. On the 12th, the hour marches over griefs like troops of Girl Scouts. You march into the 13th day, watching with popcorn, piss, and pop, and pop. You watch the trans folk and veterans march. The 14th of March comes as pie. Y'all know about that, right? 314. The 14th of March comes as pie, dressed in honey and the colors of holly. The 15th of March comes with Caesar's warning. You march through Poison Prevention Week beginning on the 16th. On the 17th, you march in a parade of people the color of money. The word of the day is limerick. You march on the 18th day, your steps steeping in pop and piss and poop. You march on the 19th day, laughing and reading aloud and watching pop, pop, pop. You march on the 20th day, dressed in rings and proposals as spring opens its pop. This is not the first time Miss Merriam-Webster said the word of the 20th day was vernal. On the 21st day, the hour marches over griefs like a parade of news vans. You march into the 22nd day, over-caffeinated and ended drowning in tequila soda pop. The word of the 22nd day is neologism, as the law breaks into news pop. The day before yesterday, it was derelict for the lawbreaker in the news. The light marches over the 23rd morning, burning. One day the word of the day is like a bomb of low light. Another day, the word of the day marches up to your door like black boots with arms and your name on a list. The 24th day is taken into the body, pop, air converted into breath in the lungs, pop. You march into the 25th day dressed in metal, pop, pop, pop. You march into the 26th day dressed in meddling, pop. The rain marches over the 27th day like a parade of money, pop, pow, pop, pop, pop. The word of the day was archetype one day in March. The word was untoward, not forward. Pop, the word was still derelict. On the 20th day, you march over griefs like a parade of pop, pop, cats. A pow, pop, pop, cascade of catastrophes out, pop, outside the in, pop, the pow, wind, pop, windows, smoke, pop, mirrors, pop. On the 29th day, you march for and into and over and along the polis and the populace and the population and the popular pow, pow, pop, the pow, pow. On the 30th day, we march pop. On the 31st day, we march pop, pop, pop. The new stuff always makes me sweat. Okay, look, I'm gonna end with this one too, just because I haven't tried it and it's coming from that. And then we can talk. Did my buzzer go off? 32 seconds. So I'll read this one and then we can talk a little bit. Just because, again, I haven't tried it and it's definitely weird and I'm already sweating, so I don't feel like I need to end with something that's dazzling. Okay, the Book of Knowledge. And again, sometimes I'm just trying to be somebody different. Can I say that to get ahead of the questions? You know, like the Tuesday Terrance and the Wednesday Terrance, totally different people, you know? So sometimes it's form, sometimes it's music, sometimes it's just whatever this is. Okay. With no system of decoding its figures, so I'm just describing a book. It's like the very first book somebody found, I guess. With no system of decoding its figures of language, the original Book of Knowledge remains an enigma of divine human intervention, buried in a mind like yours, covered in a mosaic of reflections, the stained and smoked glass constellating among the kinds of glass found in light bulbs and fun houses, sparks and shards of mishandled, handheld mirrors and cracked displays. Scholars believe before the invention of the printing press, this book was written in an ink made of rain, milk, ash, with the blood of a cut finger inscribing lines onto sheets of papyrus, palm leaves, bamboo, birch bark, parchment, vellum, leather bound in leather. Research suggests the author navigated the ancient world, blurring borders and eras, even possibly having conceived of the book in the womb and continued after death, adding at least a page or two a day, detailing curiosities, premonitions, and observations and script, looping and doubling back in the shadowy sanctum of the mind, refusing to yield to genre or time. Is it crazy? Are y'all with me? Given the ornate graphs and diagrams, however indecipherable, the text is likely partly a possible catalog of spells with riddles for answers. Some argue it may probably be an index of bioluminescent flora, or a tract of tantric respiratory mysticism, or aeronautical manual with illustrations of flight patterns for a long extinct flying people. The meaning of the book is determined by the age of the world, or whether the individual reader is born in the season of animals and migration, the season of seeds and earth, the season of temperamental water, or the season of gloaming, I think. In the Book of Knowledge, life is described in allegorical terms, as if existence resists the clarity of fact. Stories abound about damage by implication of upbringing, wherein the author sympathizes with houseplants and pets and sketches invisible cosmological roots in the dirt. The y-axis identifies y-axis this or that via the hole in front of the mind, while the x-axis expresses the costs and benefits at the back of the mind and at the top of the spine. Born, if legend is to be believed, in a place that has vanished from maps, the author is an enigmatic figure of speech, shrouded in myth and possible misinterpretations of memory, given no verifiable historical records beyond the mind's ability to transcend itself. So now what I'm gonna say to you about that is, as I said earlier, you're trying to figure out how much of it is totally with your eyes closed when you're writing a poem, how much of it is with your eyes open. So that's a little bit eyes closed, I think. It's my first time reading it, so I'm a little bit, I don't know, a little bit shaky about it. Should I end on that one? Should I read you something else? Thank you. Let's do some questions. If you have other requests, I do prefer the questions. Yes, ma'am, and I'll repeat it.
Sir, actually. Sir.
Okay. What, sir, what?
So I know that you were saying that you try to find different perspectives.
Yes.
Do you ever find yourself stuck in a perspective and unable to get out of it? Like, are you a one-time parent for a long time?
I try not to be, is what I would say. The idea that we would be different people every day would be the idea of not sort of getting stuck in one kind of style or one kind of thing. But the thing I said earlier still goes back to, like, what you do as a kind of natural self, the thing that you're sort of inclined to do, is a practice, even if your practice is staying in bed late. So the thing that you do regularly every day is the thing that you should allow yourself to kind of have that rhythm. But the other stuff, leaning against that, would be the exercises. So, that's the way I can say it. So yeah, I do think I wake up with a kind of sometimes consistent self of like, I know I want to write. But the exercise would be like, okay, so I write with my right hand, it's all kinds of like this sort of series of things to keep me from being so set on whatever I think I'm setting out to do. Yes. Yes.
So this is sort of building off of your question. I find myself also turning to the perspectives of people from many different backgrounds and cultures just because I'm so interested in what people have to say. And when it comes to writing, I want to be able to share that perspective without necessarily taking away the voices of others. And I wanted to know if you had any particular advice for sharing that.
I was at my cousin Purvis's 54th birthday. He had a little king crown on. And my cousin Kim showed up. Well, I haven't seen her really since high school. She's already drunk. And it was like 6 o'clock. And she said, I write. Terrance, I know you be writing poems and running around. I write too. And my thing was like, what's the last thing you wrote? She was like, probably high school. And she's like 45. And so I said, Kim, if you go home and write something tonight, I'll look at it tomorrow. But I don't want to look at nothing you wrote in high school. So my attitude for all of that is like, if you're writing every day, like everything gets covered. You don't have to kind of worry about a lot of the kind of minutiae of these questions if you're just in the gym every day and sort of focused on like who you are, if that makes any sense. So I say things like, even like if you're just trying to be whatever you think a good citizen is, it'll be there in the work. Your sense of righteousness, your sense of spirituality, your sense of love, kindness, all of that is there because you're making it, I think. It's like you choose pine, somebody else choose cedar to build a boat, and we already have different people. You choose a black suit, somebody else chooses a polka dot suit. Same suit, just different. And you're already into that thing that you're like really registering. You follow what I'm saying? So that's what I would say to my cousin. Like, if you are writing, I'll look at it, but you gotta be right. I don't even care what it is, but if you came up to me, Kim, and you said, Terrance, I'm a writer. Nobody's seen it, but every day I get up and I write a haiku. I'll be like, oh, let's see, I want to talk about that. So I just feel like, even the distinction I said this earlier between like an amateur and a professional, I just think professionals don't get stuck. Professionals, that's part of the job. Amateurs wait for inspiration and do it occasionally. But a professional, it's not mastery, it's just an ability that you gotta figure out how to get this thing done every day. That's what being a professional is to me. So I do avoid any notion of like writer's block. I can't think of it like that. I gotta just be, I'm writing trash. It's having to share the trash is the problem. That's the great part. But the idea that you gotta make it, you write. That's what I was saying about this thing, like this project came up, and I'm like, I write every day, it's just mostly bad. At the end of the day, I maybe get 3 poems, maybe I got 2.5. At the end of the month, and I feel like that's a good month. If I can come out of that month with about that many poems. Subject, got nothing to do with that. I know that there's gonna be some politics, there's gonna be some heartbreak, there's gonna be some joy, some music, just because that's kind of how I'm living today. Am I giving you the answer there? I just think you got to be doing it. That's really the refrain for the whole day. If you want anything to happen, you got to be doing it. And then the other stuff, the rest of it is just kind of theoretical. Yes?
What inspires you to write every single day?
I say it's only amateurs wouldn't do that. I can't be inspired. You hear what I'm saying? It can't be inspiration. It's just got to be like, even if it's bad, you have to see it as like, it can be revised. I mean, again, I really don't even track it. Like that March thing is just me doing March stuff, but it's like a thing has happened, so it'll be framed into it. But it was just a day for my daily writing that I was like, it's some weird holidays in March. Maybe it probably was around St. Patrick Day with that line of, people wearing things the color of money or something like that. But like a little something like that, you just kind of have to take it. I would have to look at my phone to see what somebody said today. They had me like, as long as I get a little something down. And I said the thing about the haiku, that's enough. We're talking 3 lines, 17 syllables. If you can do that as a practice, you're probably a writer. So it's not even what it is, it's just that gesture. So I tell you, I think I have been inspired a few times. Look, I gave you that one. It was How to Lose a Man in 10 Days. It was like Matthew McConaughey and Goldie Hawn's daughter, whatever her name is. And they were outside. That's why I had to think about going through the metal detector. They were like getting some Coca-Cola, and then she gave him the Coca-Cola again. It's probably still in the movie. And I was like, did you what the? And my dad was like, I saw it. So that's inspiration. Because I could have, I guess the movie went off. So I'm sort of saying like that would be as close as I could come to something like inspiration, that I went upstairs. And the reason I would say it's inspired because it really had nothing to do with my dad, and it was just like a clip, and it sort of came, even though the poem is not, I'm not saying it, it's not a biographical poem of any sort, but it comes just from a little image like that. So again, it's sort of just paying attention. It's just sort of like listening and watching all the time, and the work will just find you, I think. It'll just show up. Yes? Sometimes. That's my favorite answer for everything. It depends on the day. That's what I'm telling you. Beggars can't be choosers. I like to be inspired. I'm trying to think of if what I read anything here that would be like inspired in terms of like a subject inspired it versus the form. Well, that line, I was walking around, is that subject saying like things got terribly ugly incredibly quickly? I don't even think I initially thought of it as like an exercise in adverbs or anything other than a thing that probably was in my head for 6 months. If I go back to my notes, I'll see that line showing up without really knowing what it was going to be. And then I think I know what it was. I was like, isn't ugly an adverb though? Like, if you know Charlie Brown, like, ugh. He be saying ugh all the time. Charlie Brown is very ugly or uggish, something like that. So it was a thought like that. But I'm like, no, but Charlie Brown ain't ugly though. So out of that comes a thing that has nothing to do with Charlie Brown. But I say to you again, it's just about like that desperation to get you a poem, whether it might just be a busted poem or not, sometimes leading into something else would be, I say, if you're serious, and I give you a little bar, I said a haiku, if you're serious, something like that, opportunities like that, you'll find them. For my students, I give them 5 minutes. I did a Sunday workshop, and we just did like these 5-minute prompts, because I'm like, really all you need is 3 minutes. You can knock somebody out in 3 minutes, boxing. So I'm like, if I'm giving you 5 minutes, that's too much time to do a whole poem. But it's just to get them in that habit of like 5 minutes at the beginning of the day, 5 minutes at night, just jot some stuff down. You're probably a writer. Yes? Say again? How do I not let rage consume me? Well, I put it in a sonnet. I just gave you the answer. I put it in a form. I put it, because otherwise it's just air. It's just like hot air, it's uncontrolled, it's that. But then I put it in this little tiny box, and it's a box that says you gotta change your mind. I'm being very literal with you. I'm giving you a very specific answer, that was what it was. Shock. Rage is like, even that is too one-sided. I think anger and rage is always a response to something. It's kind of the least complicated of feelings, right? If you want to talk about how a person doesn't buy too much into it. But I am saying to you, of all other feelings that have stripes on them, including that, I'm just looking for a form. Even if it was incredible joy, I would still need some sort of form to make it, I don't know if the word is permanent, but to catch it, to catch it a little bit. So, I think that's what form is. Figurative language, it's a shape. Figures of speech, which we all use, shape. If it don't have no shape, it probably is the news. Like anything that casts a little bit of a shadow is a figure of speech, is figurative language. So again, I'm looking for a shape to give really everything. I usually say the day, the shape of the day. But rage would be there too, love, confusion, uncertainty, probably the biggest motif, which is even harder to think, what's the shape of uncertainty? That would be a continual pursuit, I think. Yes?
You say that everything is a metaphor for sex. I kind of want to know how you arrived at that.
I was just saying that to my students the other day. I was like, I'm a Scorpio, so I'm going to always see everything as sex. I know intimacy, closure with closure, patience, discretion, secrecy versus privacy. I could run into the various ways that would work for. I mean, obviously, when I say everything, it's a kind of ars poetica statement. It's a statement about inside of poetry or outside of poetry. I don't know, but yeah, something like that. I said earlier about the David Lynch thing. Like, David Lynch be like, "You saw the movie, why are you asking me?" I like that answer too. Like, you got the book, it's yours, you bought it. Sometimes I know, but the analogy to bring it home, it would be like asking me about my children. Like, I know a little bit about it. I did raise them, but I certainly don't know everything about my kids and what their private lives are and what they do after I send them out into the world with a little stamp on them. You see what I'm saying? So I do hope that I have raised them up well enough that they can speak for themselves and that I can say, yes, that's a good poem there. I think that's a pretty good poem based on what I know about it. But beyond that, I can't really say a whole bunch about sort of what everybody thinks sex is. Everything's a metaphor for sex. Everybody thinks a metaphor is. So that goes back to it. Like, I try to do my best with them and raise them up. But once they get out there, metaphor as best as I do. Yes, a few more. How we doing with time? Yes. Well, I read all the time. I'm getting ready to judge this. I kept telling them no. So here's information. This is things so we suspect about judges and things in any judging show. Like, I did win the National Book Award, and they kept asking me to judge it. And I was like, no, because it's 5 people. And I feel like, and this is true, and I'm giving you, the sauce? I don't know how people say it. Even if 3 people, this has happened a few times with the Pulitzer, if 3 people are judging a thing, it usually would be the second thing that they kind of agree with. And I know that's true for the National Book Award, because there's other times I should have won it, and we won't talk about that. I just know. So I was like, for this book and for another book, but because I was a finalist, I was in the top 5, but whatever. And I heard about the conversations that happened. So this time, because it's a busy world, this is what I'm giving you, because I'm like distraction, I don't think I'm going to be able to do sonnets this time. They'll come, but I can't rely on it as a device to deal with not going and looking at my 401 motherfucking K, which I have not done. I don't want to look at it. I would rather be talking to y'all and trying to come up with a poem or reading a poem. You follow what I'm saying? That was my strategy last time. So now I'm still sort of trying to figure it out. But what I decided was, okay, I'll do the National Book Award. So they was like, you can be the boss. So it's 5 people. But the reason I didn't want to do it is because, again, any combination of people at a table trying to agree about art of all things. They can't even agree about math. If you get 5 people at a table and be like, do you think 2 + 2 = 4? Somebody be like, well, can we talk about whether it does or not? So with poetry, that's totally a thing. And so, but I think I'm going to do it because I would rather not be watching the news. You hear what I'm saying? So generally, I'm always reading. I always read my student stuff. I blur probably 1 book a month. It's sort of like watching, trying to keep abreast of sports. It's the same. You just got to be in the background all the time. I think I probably read more than even most poets I know, honestly. But it is that's why that's why I'm a good poet. Because I read. Borges said he would be, and I'm totally this way because I agree with him, that he would brag forever on how much he's read. He challenged anybody in the room to say they read more than him. But the writing stuff, very humble when it comes to the writing. So I agree with Borges on that. I will tell you all my reading and how much I read. But the writing is, it's always I hope it happens, that kind of thing the next day. We'll come in the back and then we'll come forward. Yes. Pittsburgh, I love Pittsburgh all around. Well, here's one thing I say to people that don't know Pittsburgh. Name another place that has a museum that big for a contemporary artist. So the Andy Warhol, maybe in New York. Even in New York, I can't think of in Oaxaca. No, it ain't Oaxaca. There's someplace, maybe Mexico City, they have maybe a Frida Kahlo museum or something, but she's even further back. So I don't think I would count her as contemporary. So that's one thing I say. Name a place that would have a whole museum to a kind of contemporary artist and a whole kind of contemporary space to a contemporary black playwright. So you have the August Wilson Center and you have the Andy Warhol Museum. And that just says everything about, I think, the people that everybody would go to those places. Obviously we got, I was going to say Three River Stadium. That's how old it is. Obviously we have those buildings too, and people show up, the same people show up. But I find, even that they're clustered together, something symbolic about that. So there's some places, I would say Portland, Maine, maybe. Portland, Oregon is like good with books, but it's not necessarily a poetry place. Pittsburgh's poetry, Chicago obviously is a poetry town, and a few other places. So I don't know how that happens, but there are certain places that have a kind of energy that's not one-sided, is what I would say. So, yeah. Yes, up front. I don't know who had a hand up.
So the daily practice thing that you kept saying, was that always something that was natural to you, or was this something you kind of had to discipline yourself into? Because I have a friend who I've known since he was like 11, and he's had the daily practice since then.
Right.
But I also know other people who it really is like pushed to them, they have to do it like whether or not they want to.
Sure. And can I say, I am thinking about poems. Like I always have written poems, but like obviously a daily practice for a fiction writer is going to be a little something different. For that, I just do sentences. So I even think about it sometimes, like a sentence a day gets to be useful for people to make it something more practical for people. But yeah, I mean, I didn't take any classes, so I sort of didn't know that it was wrong. I said earlier, I spent most of my college working on a paragraph. I wrote other stuff, and when I was told to apply to school, I just sent them everything, and they put me in poetry. But I had been working on what I guess it was a prose poem, but I just thought it was a paragraph about working with my dad in the yard until I got it right. That Ars Poetica with Bacon poem, that's probably I probably worked on that for maybe a year to get that to wherever it was going to be. And what I would say to you is that, and this would be true for a long time, I like to have something to work on. I like Scrabble. I never could do the Rubik's Cube thing. But anything that's like I can return to and kind of, again, focus my energy around it as opposed to like whatever's going to be anxiety inducing in my home or in the world. So that's what it was. It was just a place to kind of be quiet for a little time. Never a thing that I thought about it, again, even in college, as a thing that was going to be like something that would put me here. How about that? Something that I could like make a living at. It was just a good way to pass the time. And I still think that. I still spend a lot of time like fiddling on things that never become anything. I think about, I don't want to give examples, but yeah, I'm like, how many hours in a day? I spend half of them gluing a little dot on something that I threw away at the end of the night. It's that kind of thing. Sometimes it's a word, and so, but I think that's a good way to pass the time, keeping record, How we doing? Are we doing one more? Yes. Great.
You talked about in the Q&A your first teaching experience being beloved and a very funny story about your professor. And then I noticed in the poem that you read tonight about continuity errors, beloved gifts. Have you taught Morrison since that first experience?
No, but again, I like this question too. You know why? Because this is sort of picking up on something I was saying earlier about like, really it's a launch pad. And I say this to my grad students too. Like my deepest desire for my students, even if they're like Ocean Vuong, actually this is true for Ocean Vuong, because I'm like, well, that second book of poems, the first book you had some help with. Anyway, so my deepest desire would be to keep going, just to kind of like have some sense that it's not like about a test or about a graduation. So that's what I say about everything that sort of happens here, this idea of just looking for something that you can kind of keep playing with, keep working on. So with the Toni Morrison, like, have I looked at any Toni Morrison since she passed away? No. Before she passed away, I've read all the books. They just sort of make their way sometimes into the poems, but I'm sort of saying like, it's a lifelong thing. Like starting that college experience with Toni Morrison just means I read her, but I don't necessarily have to do anything with her. It's just like maybe it's the residue from teaching her that time. Do you know what I'm saying? So maybe she shows up in poems and she is a conversation piece, but my relationship to her is a college nostalgia. Faulkner, college nostalgia. Keats, if we're just talking about, there's other stuff too, but if we're talking about Philip Pearlstein, this dude, before I ever got to Pittsburgh, this sort of hyper-realist dude I discovered in art class, lifelong. Jimi Hendrix, lifelong relationship. My biggest one, actually my second biggest one, my biggest one would be maybe Flannery O'Connor, Vladimir Nabokov, somebody I never taught really, never really had a big conversation with, but like just spending so much time over a lifetime, just rereading Lolita, sometimes thinking it works, sometimes thinking it doesn't, those kinds of things. And I feel like this is where that happens. Like you get something, you hear something, you put it on your bookshelf, you don't sell it, don't sell a book. Maybe you come back to it in a little while, and it means something different to you. But that would be true for everything. Again, it's true for the calculus and the economics and a lot of other stuff that you figure out. It's not supposed to stop, is what I think. It's supposed to keep growing. That sounds too nerdy to say. Is that it, y'all? Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you.